Welcome to the Globe Digger Solo Travel Podcast, episode 2. This episode is going to be all about my travel methodology in terms of how do I do this? How do I book my accommodations? How do I figure out where I'm going to eat, where I'm going to stay, what I'm going to do, all that fun stuff. So I have come up with a travel methodology. Before I did my trip around the world in 2022, I was your typical crazy expensive weekend in Vegas. Probably did Vegas like 12, 13, 14 times. Or I would go away to a resort for a week and I would spend thousands of dollars. And, I'd blow my brains out. I call it, these vacations on steroids. So that was me. And then something went off in 2022 when I decided to travel the world and I was going to do it differently. But in order to do this, this was more of I'm going to get off the beaten path. I'm going to mix with locals, and it was going to be a different way to travel. So, and I knew I was going to be gone for a full year. So it was like, okay, obviously if you're doing this, you're always on the run, you're always traveling, you're always going to your next destination. You may be in a spot for 3-4 days, then you land somewhere else. You don't have time to be constantly researching, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? All this stuff. So yeah, I had to come up with a methodology in terms of, okay, how am I going to do this that's not time consuming? Because you're always traveling. This isn't where you prepare for 6 months to go away for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks in Europe even, where you got everything figured out, everything you're going to do, here's your itinerary. Just can't be like that when you're always going, especially when you have a plan where you're going to get off the beaten path. How do I plan long-term travel on the fly? This is something that I get asked quite a bit, and you don't have time to extensively research hotels, attractions, restaurants, all this stuff. So you just don't have time to do it. So basically what I do, I'm on the fly. So maybe when I'm on a bus, I'm going somewhere, I will do a quick Google search. Okay, I'm going into Lima, Peru. What are the top 10 things to do there? So, you got a sense, and it's like, okay, here's some things. But other than that, that's it. So really all I do is, the one big thing is I always stay in a hostel on arrival. So I go into a new place and I stay in a hostel. Hostels always have tour desks, tours, some things off the beaten path in terms of what to do. So that's my first way. And usually they'll often have a free walking tour, which is a great way to get accustomed to a new city. And that's why hostels are great. And the other thing is I connect with people. Hostels are a great way to connect with people that are maybe traveling long-term. They're on one of these backpacker paths, trails, and they're just going. So they've done all these things, or maybe they've already been to somewhere and they're going the other way you are in terms of where you're going next, or what they did. Maybe they've been there for a couple weeks or a week and they've done a bunch of things. So I connect, I talk with in the hostels, and I find out what's going on. The other thing I do is just connect with locals. And naturally in the hostels, you're connecting with tourists, as I just mentioned, and in terms of what to do, as well as the locals that work there. But the other thing in the tour desks, but the other thing is just connect with locals. When you're in a hostel, by default, you are going to be outside of a tourist area. And yeah, you're going to be going out for drinks, places, maybe grabbing dinner, and you are going to meet people. You're going to connect with people that work in these restaurants that are there. You're sitting at a bar. They're going to be very, intrigued about Canada and my country. And then I learn about theirs. So, and in terms of the cultures, and what do I do? What should I be doing? And you're going to get, by doing this, you don't have to spend all that time doing hours of research. You're gonna check it off, and you're gonna be able to, okay, now I got a bit of an attack. This is what I'm gonna do while I'm in this city. The other thing what I like to do, and I mentioned this, is yeah, the plan is to, get off the beaten path and live like a local. You're traveling, you're going long term. So what I do generally is it's this 80-20 rule that I've come up with. And 80% of the time, I'm living like a local. So when I'm living like a local, I'm maybe cooking my own meals. I'm going to markets where I'm shopping, I'm buying local foods, and then I'm cooking them up, whether I'm at a hostel or maybe an Airbnb, whatever that is, wherever I'm staying. So that's one thing I do. I do go out in these local neighborhoods because I'm not in the tourist areas. I'm in the, I'm off the beaten path. So, and then just by going to those local markets, going to local bars, local restaurants, just doing everything that a local would do as if you were back home living in your country. So that's what I'm doing. And then the other 20% of the time, yeah, I become a tourist. So maybe on the weekends. So if I'm in, just a city that has that tourist hub, then yeah, I'll go down, maybe be a tourist. Maybe you're gonna go and do a tour, one of those hop on, hop off tours. Maybe you're in London. So, you're not gonna go to London and not be a tourist and not go and see, go to the palace and see all these amazing sights. You're gonna do that. You're gonna go in, you're gonna be a tourist. You're gonna maybe do some of these touristy things, because you are gonna go and see all this. You're gonna go to Machu Picchu, of course. You're gonna do the different wonders of the world. You're gonna do the pyramids when you're in Egypt. Obviously, you're gonna do all that stuff. So that's kind of how I do it, where I can live like a local and then be a tourist, and I do split it up. Okay, in terms of finding accommodations outside of these tourist areas, I use two apps. The first one is Hostel World. And again, I mentioned I use Hostel World. I use it a lot because that to me is the best way to get into a new city. You stay in a hostel. And just to talk a little bit about hostels as well. Hostels, even for me, I was 49 when I started doing this. And they're clean, they're safe. There's like 5-star hostels. They're absolutely incredible. So, they're cheap, they're budget friendly, which works for long-term travel. So yeah, I stay in hostels, and what I use an app called Hostel World. It's an amazing app. Once you're locked in, you're using it. I'll be on a bus going somewhere. I don't have a place to stay yet, going into this new city or town. And Hostel World app, I punch in, this is the city I'm going to, and then I got like maybe even hundreds of hostel listings. It's got reviews. It has, 5-star reviews, lots of comments, and very quickly, and it literally will take me like 90 seconds. And I go in, okay, this one looks good location, click, boom, charge to my card, you're booked in. I would say that's a 90-second process. So Hostel World's amazing, and it's a very cost-effective way to travel. The other one I do to even get a little bit more off the beaten path sometimes, when I just want to kind of chill, you want to relax, you want to be in a local neighborhood, I use Airbnb. So it's great, and you can always find, I was in Lisbon, Portugal. And I remember I was staying with this family in a high-rise in Lisbon, there was no tourists around. I probably had the best croissant I've ever had in my life up the street from that place. I was able to, I was shopping. I was buying $1 bottles of wine in Portugal. Just kind of like, okay, this local's grabbing this bottle of wine. I'm going to grab that. And I literally completely felt like a local. It felt like just the architecture, everything. Yeah, you were in like just a community. It's probably, to get to a tourist area from there, I was probably a 40-minute metro ride. But it's a great thing. It really gets you off the beaten path, allows you to be with locals. Again, it's safe. These are vetted. These are great sites. I've never had an issue with either one of these apps. And yeah, it is my way to get accommodations outside the tourist areas. Getting around. Oh yeah, this is a good one too. This is something I love. So if I'm going from country to country, I'm not booking flights if I can avoid it. I'm looking for that experience where I'm looking at buses, trains, boats, because it's longer term travel. If you have some time, and I've just had so many epic journeys where I've seen so many cool things. And just so when I got to when I started in Nicaragua, and I didn't get on a plane again until I arrived in Colombia. So I went through Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama to Colombia without being in a plane. And you might think, oh yeah, I'm not going to be on a bus for like 80 hours or whatever you might think I had to do, but that's not the case at all. I literally, from Nicaragua, took a school bus to the border. Then I walked into Costa Rica. Then I took another bus to the jungle and then made my way completely through Costa Rica on buses. And these were like local buses. So it's local transportation because it's like almost free. It's so cheap. And I saw all of Costa Rica this way. I saw all of Nicaragua this way. And then I did the same thing where I walked into Panama and then buses again, then boats into like Bocas del Toro, and then into like Panama City, complete buses. And then this is where it gets amazing. This is a long story, but regardless, I ended up on a sailboat on my way to Cartagena, Colombia. So I literally sailed for 5 days across the sea through the San Blas Islands and to Cartagena, Colombia. Most people are like, these are a lot of flights going on for a lot of people, especially if you don't have the time. But to me, I literally went through that part of Central America, and I saw the beautiful countryside. I saw the country, connected with people, and it was absolutely incredible. Think about that. I spent 3 days sailing through the San Blas Islands in Panama, the most beautiful islands and beaches on the planet. And then I spent, I think, about 40 or 48 hours at sea going to Cartagena with like 10 people. And it's an amazing experience. So when I can, that's how I'm doing it. Buses, trains, boats. And even when I'm in a town or in a city itself, I'm not jumping in cabs. Number one, it just becomes expensive. Uber, all of that. To me, it's just not feasible when you're traveling long term. But I also, I take metros. I take SkyTrains. I take river taxis. I walk a lot. And I just learn the city. I see the city. I'm all over the city. And to me, it's just fun. You got something, these little challenges where you're like, okay, I'm going to figure out the metro in Medellin, Colombia, or Bangkok. And it gets you, you just get around. It's an amazing way to get around. Of course, if I'm out 3 a.m, I really might feel like there's a safety issue. I may jump in a cab. There are times when you do it and you just want to be safe. But for the most part, I don't. I keep it. The key is local transportation. In terms of dining, getting out, eating out, which you do a lot. I did mention earlier on in the podcast that, I cook my own meals. There's an authentic part of that. They can be cost savings. But when I'm in like Central, South America, Southeast Asia especially, I'm all about the street food. Locals, that's what locals do. Locals hardly even shop grocery shop, because the street food is just so good and inexpensive, and you can find healthy options. So yeah, I live on street food, and that's basically it. And it's the best. It's a great experience. I don't ever recall actually getting sick from street food, so it's generally safe as well. I do eat out, especially when you're in like Europe, for example. Eating out is something that you're gonna have to, yeah, you're gonna be doing. And when I eat out, though, I make sure it's authentic and local food. That's my rule. Sure, every once in a while, you're going to need a Big Mac. You've been away for 6 months and you just reminds you of home, and you'll do that. But very occasionally, for the most part, though, yeah, I find local restaurants that are going to give me a local experience, and I'm going to eat local. So if I'm in Nicaragua somewhere, let's say, it's like, yeah, I'm going to have the chicken and rice, maybe some nachos as an appetizer, maybe ceviche in Peru. I'm not going out for a big juicy burger and fries. You do that in many of these countries, you're going to pay through the roof anyways. And when you're traveling long term, yeah, it's a budget thing, but it's about the experience. It's about the local experience and traveling like a local. So part of it is eating like a local. So yeah, it's always local, almost always local anyways. It's 95% of the time it's going to be local foods, and yeah, street food and dining out. And then of course there's those times in those Airbnbs and the hostels where I just cook from home. I also like to eat with locals too, of course, when you get a chance. And I think I did touch on this a little earlier on. But there's apps and services too that do this. Like, yeah, you're going to connect with people and meet them, make friends, go out for dinner, whatever, and just kind of they take you to their place. I actually had this happen in Laos. I think it was, yeah, I want to say Vang Vieng. Yeah, Vang Vieng, Laos. And this this girl that owned the hotel, I went out with her one night, and she took me to one of her favorite restaurants, taught me how to, take those big kind of like faux bowls, whatever they are, and all the stuff she ends up throwing in it. And, this is like what she likes. So yeah, I went out, you learn a lot from them in terms of what they like and just how the locals eat and live. But there's a service called Eat With that actually is where locals in these different parts of the world, and I think they can probably have them in Canada and the US and England, but so you're in Czech Republic, let's say, like there you can find through this Eat With service where they're going to be hosting a dinner party. So you can actually go in, they're going to put on this big spread. You might pay, I don't know, $20, $25, maybe $30, something like that. And you're going to get a complete local experience with dinner, with drinks, with a mix of locals at the table, as well as some tourists. And yeah, it's just a great way to connect with locals. So, I mean, solo traveling, you meet people a lot. You're solo maybe 15-20% of the time. All those other times you're out with people, whether there's tourists and there's locals, and you want to maximize that opportunity with locals, because that's what we're doing. We're there to, a big part of travel is about connecting with locals, learning about cultures and all of that. So yeah, it's a great way to do it. Booking tours, attractions, all that fun stuff. Next to tours, this is the one thing that people probably stress about. They go away, they get their hotel, they get their resort booked, whatever it is. Then the next thing, they just go right into overload to create an itinerary in terms of what am I going to do. So, and I did mention this earlier on, but what the first thing I do is show up in a hostel. For you, it might be a hotel, and start there. There's going to be a tour desk there. Especially in all these different places, what are the things to do? I like the hostels because you get kind of that off the beaten path stuff, some things that isn't marketed, that other people, that tourists may not know about. But even in your hotel, you're going to get those top things. You get into Phuket, yeah, here's what Phi Phi Islands, Monkey Beach, James Bond Island, the Big Buddha, all this stuff. So that's the first place to go to. And then, of course, there's you're going to connect with locals, with tourists that are there, what they do. We talked all about that, so I won't drill that anymore. But the other thing, I have two apps I use, and there's one, and this is a great, amazing app, the Guru Walk app. So this is a free app with free tours. So this is number one. Another, if I don't find it at my hotel or hostel, I'm going to find it on Guru Walk. I always do the walking tour. I go into a new city, I'm going to do a walking tour. Just it's just an incredible app. There's so Central and South America, all through Europe, Egypt. There's tons of tours in every city, and not so great in Southeast Asia, but we'll get into that in a second. So with this app, I've done things like I literally had my own personal guide that was a National Geographic photographer that took me to the pyramids, spent a whole day with me at the pyramids. You should see my videos from Egypt. It's incredible. And because I had this professional photographer taking videos and taking pictures, it was a complete epic experience. He was local, and then he took me out on the ATVs, and I was going bombing all the way through the Sahara Desert. It was just incredible, all from a free app. This would be better than any tour you'd pay hundreds of dollars for. And I had a professional photographer. And I think at the end of the day, I gave him $20. Normal would be 10 for this. And it's amazing. I also did the Coptic Cairo tour when I was in Cairo, Egypt, which is all those just amazing, all the Christian incredible churches and everything that's there. And yeah, Guru Walk I'm telling you, regardless of what your budget is for travel, download this app, make sure you check it out. And it's, you're going to absolutely love it. It is my first go-to for everything tours. Second is get your guide. These are paid tours, much less budget friendly, but it's an app I use, and it's really good. But it's expensive. You'll do like a food tour in Bangkok where you're going to hit on a tuk-tuk, all these amazing places. It's probably going to be $100. So there's a cost associated with it, but you get some pretty epic tours. Halong Bay in Vietnam, all this kind of stuff. So it's a great resource. And especially in places like Southeast Asia, the Guru Walk doesn't really exist for the most part. I don't know. They just haven't caught on to it for whatever reason. But get your guides, kind of that next go-to for me. So that's basically it in terms of how I do it. I get asked a lot. Okay, how do you do this? How do you even plan? Like, I get asked this all the time on my social media accounts, and a lot of people think that they assume often that, oh well, he just wants to travel on the cheap. Doesn't have any money, whatever it is. No, I do. It's I can afford, as I mentioned earlier, to take off to Vegas for the weekend and spend big, all of that. But by following these principles, it gets me off the beaten path. And this is how I want to travel. And it just so happens that it's a cost-effective way to do it. It's cheaper to do it. But it's like by doing all of this and just getting out a little bit, out of your comfort zone, off the beaten path, it's just going to be a completely different experience for you. And I'm telling you, you're not going to go, I don't think hardly anybody goes back to the way they had it before. I get invited all the time, all-inclusive resorts, $3,000-$4,000 for a week. And I'm like, I can go to Guatemala for like a month for less than that and live large the whole time. So I hope you got something out of this. I hope I've inspired somebody to maybe change a little bit in terms of how they travel, take some of these tips we talked about today on the podcast, and get out there and enjoy the world. Out.